the echo beyond neurons. Since childhood, we were taught that everything we think, feel, and remember is born there, between the folds and connections of the brain. Modern science built temples in its honor: laboratories, scans, theories. You are your brain, repeat the voices of mechanistic biology. But in silent nights, when the body rests and the mind awakens in impossible dreams, a disturbing question arises. Does consciousness truly come from the brain, or does it simply pass through it? Think of the radio in your home. You turn it on, and the music begins to play. It's easy to believe that the device produces the song. But turn it off, and you realize the music never disappeared. It keeps traveling through the air, invisible, untouchable, beyond the reach of your eyes. The radio only decodes what was already there. What if the brain is just that? A translator, an antenna, a filter that shapes the unnameable into forms, words, and memories. Human experiences begin to challenge the materialist view. People who, even with the brain silenced by deep anesthesia, report being conscious. Stories of dreams that foresee accidents. Coincidences that feel more like messages than chance. The invisible insists on being revealed. The echo that comes from outside cannot be explained only by what vibrates within. The lamp shines, but it does not create the sun. The brain organizes, but perhaps it does not create consciousness. A simple invitation: close your eyes for a moment and notice the space between two thoughts. That interval, that silence, is not absence. It is pure presence. It is where something dwells that no brain map can locate. A spark that escapes the microscope, yet allows itself to be felt within. And what if what we call the mind is only a window, not the house? What if true consciousness is out there looking through us? The testimony of those who returned. There are moments when the boundary between life and death seems to dissolve. Doctors declare the end. Heart stopped, no brain activity, cold machines tracing only straight lines. But against all logic, some return. And what they recount is more than a simple delirium. Near-death experiences appear in every culture. Men, women, children. Theists, believers, skeptics. All describe something that should not be possible. Lucid memories during moments when the brain was inactive. Some speak of a light that does not blind, but embraces. Others of a tunnel that feels less like an escape and more like a calling, a return to something forgotten. There are those who describe encounters with deceased relatives, or with beings radiating a love impossible to capture in words. But perhaps the most unsettling accounts are the ones that bring verifiable proof. Patients who describe objects on top of cabinets, shoes left on hospital rooftops, instruments used by doctors during resuscitation. Details later confirmed by the medical staff. How can this be explained? If memory were confined to the brain, how could someone with no brain activity register external events with such precision? It is as if consciousness, once freed from the body, gains new perspectives, able to see beyond, hear beyond, understand beyond. What for mechanistic science sounds like impossibility, for the soul feels like remembrance. Life does not end when the heart falls silent. It only shifts its frequency. Among the most studied cases, doctors documented patients who described exact colors and numbers on objects hidden high on shelves, far beyond the line of sight of anyone lying down. These accounts serve as beacons in the darkness, pointing to a truth: consciousness is not confined to the borders of flesh. If one can see, hear, and feel even without brain activity, what does that reveal about the place where consciousness truly dwells? The soul's memory. There are stories that begin in childhood and defy time. Young children, still unaware of maps or biographies, start speaking of distant places, forgotten names, lives they could not possibly remember. A 3-year-old girl describes in detail the street where she lived before, in a city her parents had never visited. A boy speaks of the profession he once had, recalling even the color of the house and the habits of his former family. In many cases, the accounts were verified, addresses confirmed, real people found, memories recognized. These stories repeat across different cultures, as if they were fragments of the same enigma. Memory does not seem confined to the brain born with the body. It is as though the soul carries an invisible book whose pages open at unpredictable moments. A book containing chapters written long before the present birth, chapters crossing the boundaries of centuries and geographies. When a child recalls the name of an old village or describes the scar once carried on another body, we face a testimony that does not fit within the paradigm of biology. It is the wheel turning, the cycle returning, samsara revealing itself. Perhaps the brain is only the stage, but the memory of the soul is the actor who returns, scene after scene, life after life. The wheel of samsara, present in Eastern traditions, represents this continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It is the reminder that life is not a straight line, but a spiral in motion. Each existence is just another turn in this eternal circle. But if these memories are not kept in the physical brain, then where are they stored? The invisible field. There are secrets that cannot be captured by scalpels or microscopes. Information that seems to hover around life, like an invisible web connecting everything that has ever been lived, thought, or felt. Modern physics began to glimpse this when it entered the quantum world. There, particles are not just things. They are probabilities, fields of information, possibilities in constant dance. The universe appears more like a hologram than a machine. And in this hologram, each part contains the whole. Some scientists call this space the informational field, others the quantum vacuum. Ancient mystics named it Akasha, the invisible records that hold everything that has ever happened. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake described it as morphic fields, suggesting that habits, memories, and forms are not created from nothing, but are resonances of patterns already existing. It is as though every thought we have, every emotion we feel, echoes into a greater field, leaving traces. And those traces are not lost. They remain available, waiting to be accessed, like invisible radio waves awaiting a receiver. The memory of the soul may dwell in this field. Intuition may be a glimpse of it. The coincidences we call chance may be nothing more than small openings where this ocean of information overflows into our lives. Rupert Sheldrake proposed an intriguing experiment. The idea that when a behavior is learned in one place, it becomes easier for beings in other places to learn it too. As if the learning of one individual carved a trail in the field, later accessible to all. An example of this would be the sudden solving of puzzles in different parts of the world, right after they were solved in just one place. If this is true, then consciousness is not a prisoner of flesh. It resonates within an invisible fabric that embraces everything. And what if consciousness were, in truth, a network greater than the body? A network that does not begin in us, but one we simply participate in? The brain as antenna. What if the brain were not the author of consciousness, but only its translator? This idea may sound like heresy to traditional science, yet it makes sense when we look at certain simple metaphors. Think again of a radio. It does not create the music, it only captures invisible frequencies and turns them into audible sound. The same is true of television, tuning into images already traveling through the air. The device is not the source, only the interpreter. So it may be with the brain, not a producer, but a receiver, not a factory, but an antenna. Consciousness would exist in the invisible field, and the brain would merely translate it into human language, words, images, sensations. This metaphor solves a paradox. How can we explain vivid memories in people whose brains were severely damaged by injury? How do we understand sudden abilities that appear after accidents, as if a broken antenna had begun to capture new frequencies? Perhaps consciousness does not depend on the integrity of the device, but on the strength of the signal. The silence between thoughts may be seen as a small proof of this. When you close your eyes and watch the mind, you notice thoughts rise and fall like waves. But between one wave and the next, there is space. And in that space, there is a presence observing it all. A presence that cannot be located in any brain region. It simply is. A brief exercise. Close your eyes for a few seconds. Watch a thought arise. It comes, grows, and dissolves. Now watch another. And between them, notice the silent interval. That silence is the antenna cleared. It is where consciousness reveals itself in its purest form, without words, images, or memories. But what happens when the antenna shuts down and the signal continues? If the brain turns off, does the transmission vanish, or is it finally set free? The mystery of out-of-body experiences. There are moments when someone swears they have been outside themselves, and not as a metaphor. These are accounts of people vividly describing scenes that happened elsewhere, while their bodies remained still, asleep, or in a clinical state of inactivity. The so-called out-of-body experiences span centuries of testimony. From Tibetan monks in deep meditation practices to ordinary people who, after a lucid dream, claim to have visited a distant friend's home and described objects they had never seen before. The most unsettling moments are when these accounts become verifiable. In experiments conducted in laboratories, participants in trance described symbols hidden in rooms they never had physical access to. Even the CIA, during the Cold War, funded research on remote viewing, intrigued by the possibility that the mind could travel beyond the body. For those who live the experience, it is often accompanied by the perception of a silver cord, an ethereal thread connecting consciousness to the physical body. This metaphor appears in ancient texts, from the Kabbalah to the Book of Ecclesiastes, always as a reminder that something binds us here, yet does not completely confine us. It is as if the body were a harbor, but consciousness the ship. At times, it slips free of its moorings and sails away. And when it returns, it brings back memories that defy scientific logic. The image of the silver cord is universal, an invisible link ensuring that even when the soul travels, it knows the way home. This symbol appears repeatedly in reports of astral projection, serving as archetypal proof that the mystery is far older than we imagine. But the inevitable question arises: who is it that travels when the body sleeps? If it is not the brain, if it is not the flesh, then what exactly sets out toward the unknown? Ancient echoes of eternity. Long before modern laboratories, long before brains were dissected in search of secrets, ancient traditions already spoke of a consciousness that transcends the body. In Egypt, the Book of the Dead described the soul's journey after death, guided by symbols and rituals that helped it cross the veil. For them, the body was only a temporary temple, while the essence continued. In India, the Vedas and the philosophies of Vedanta declared that the Atman, the true self, is neither born nor dies, but only takes on forms. The mind, they said, is like the moon reflecting the light of the sun, radiant, but not by its own power. The Hermetists, heirs of Hermes Trismegistus wisdom, repeated, as above, so below. For them, the human being was the reflection of a greater consciousness, a fragment of the divine experiencing itself in flesh. Even the eye of Horus, so often seen as a mere ornament, was a symbol of vision beyond the physical, a reminder of a higher perception, able to see beyond matter. These echoes crossed the ages as whispers of eternity. They were not poetic metaphors, but records of real spiritual experiences translated into the language and symbols of their time. What we now call astral projection, déjà vu, or the memory of the soul was, for them, simply the spirit's everyday life. The eye of Horus may be seen as the clearest representation of this ancestral wisdom, an eye that does not belong to the body, but to consciousness. It does not look outward, but inward, and it sees the invisible reality. But if cultures so distant already knew this, why did we forget? Who led us away from a truth that once seemed natural to the ancients? The conspiracy of forgetting. If ancient civilizations already recognized consciousness as something beyond flesh, how did we arrive at a time where it is reduced to nothing more than electrical activity in the brain? Forgetting was not just an accident. It was a project. With the rise of the materialist paradigm, everything that could not be measured was discredited. The soul became metaphor. The spirit, superstition. Near-death experiences, memories of past lives, visions, and intuitions were cast aside as delusion. Reductionist science insisted, the mind is only the brain. But in enforcing this dogma, it did not merely erase mysteries. It severed us from ourselves. Who benefits when we believe we are only flesh? Industries that sell comfort to the body. Systems that shape fragile identities. Structures of power that prefer individuals who see themselves not as eternal, but as limited. There is no need to imagine secret conspiracies in dark rooms. It is enough to look at the effect. A humanity that fears death as absolute end, and because of that, becomes easy prey to fear, consumption, and manipulation. The great forgetting is an invisible prison. It stops us from remembering that what we are goes beyond biology. It convinces us we were born without purpose, live by chance, and disappear into nothingness. But somewhere deep inside, something resists. Something whispers, like an ancient memory, it is not so. Many mystical texts call this condition the veil of Maya, the veil of illusion, a curtain hiding the greater reality. Spiritual awakening, then, is not learning something new, but removing that veil and remembering what was always there. And what if, in remembering who we truly are, we discovered not only our own eternity, but also the living web that connects us to everyone else? Consciousness as an ocean. Imagine a vast ocean without borders. Each human being, each life, is like a wave rising for a moment, dancing on the surface, then returning to the deep waters. The wave appears individual, yet it never ceased to be the ocean itself. So it is with consciousness. Every thought we have, every emotion we feel, does not belong only to us. They reverberate in the invisible field, like drops spreading in circles over water. When we miss someone at the very moment they are thinking of us, we call it coincidence. When a mother senses her child is in danger, even miles away, we call it instinct. But perhaps all of this is simply daily proof that we share the same sea. Studies on spontaneous telepathy and premonitions point to this very truth. Consciousness does not obey the limits of physical space. Our thoughts meet even before our words. It is here that the separation imposed by materialism begins to crumble. We are not isolated islands. We are waves of the same ocean, different in form, identical in essence. And when we realize this, something shifts. The boundaries between I and other grow fragile. Another's suffering no longer feels distant. Another's joy also reaches us. Now, an invitation. Close your eyes for a few seconds and imagine how many people, in this very moment, are wondering about the same thing as you. Feel the invisible field that unites us. Breathe deeply and sense that the thought is not yours alone. It belongs to the entire ocean. If we are all part of a greater ocean, what changes in the way we live, love, and choose? The return of the spark. There comes a moment when the journey closes like a circle. We return to the starting point, yet we are no longer the same. After passing through near-death accounts, soul memories, invisible fields, and ancestral wisdom, only one silent certainty remains. Consciousness is not born, nor does it die, with the body. The brain may shut down, the heart may fall silent, the senses may fade. But that which observes, that which witnesses, remains. Like an eternal spark that can never be extinguished. Each life is like a candle lit. The body, the visible flame. The wind may blow it out, but the fire that ignited it still exists, ready to light other candles. So it is with consciousness. It moves from form to form, from life to life, from moment to moment. And when we remember this, the fear of death loses its hold. The existential void dissolves. The question, "Who am I?" finds a different answer. I'm not only this flesh. I'm not only this name. I'm not only this story. I am the presence that flows through them all. Living, then, ceases to be a burden and becomes a sacred act. Each gesture, each word, each choice carries the weight and the lightness of eternity. We are not biological machines fighting against time. We are travelers of the soul, fragments of the divine, sparks of the eternal. You are not what you think, nor what the body reflects. You are the spark that observes, the presence that crosses worlds. The brain may fall silent, but consciousness continues to sing. And in that song, you are already eternal.